chairman doesn't see a quorum, but we'll go ahead and get started anyway.
Our quorum just walked.
The quorum just walked in? All right. Did you change your name?
Yes. Yes, my name is changed.
All right. Thank you. I'm Dale Devon, state representative from St. Joe County, which happens to be the home of the Fighting Irish, for those that can't remember or don't know. But thank you all for being here. And it's winter time, but it's also session time, so it's a crazy time for a lot of us. And it's people, I know a couple other legislators might be popping in yet. So with that, let's just do introductions real quick. And Mark, you want to kick it off?
Mark Fairchild, Executive Director of the Commission on Improving the Status of Children.
Dana Kenworthy, Judge on the Court of Appeals.
Representative Vanessa Summers, House District 99.
Good morning. I'm Eden Beasy. I'm a Dr. Weaver's proxy today from Department of Health.
Good morning. Sarah Sailors, Director for the Division of Mental Health and Addiction.
Good morning. Harmony Gist, Executive Director of Operations for DCS, filling in for Jennifer, filling in for Adam.
Good morning. Chris Naylor, Executive Director of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council.
Good morning. Bernice Portley, Executive Director of the Public Defender Council. Good morning.
Good morning, Janet. Good morning, Emma Blackwell, Youth Representative.
Again, thank you. And I guess I wanted to start off by thanking our honorable Judge Kenworthy on her chairmanship that she did last year. And thank you. You did a great job. And I know Adam Krupp was mentioned, and we just want to keep lifting him up in prayers and just help him for the best for him, and wishing Jennifer and Ronnie just the best of luck to continue to help our kids in the state. So with that, I know we have minutes that we have, and you've been passed around. Can we take those approval of the minutes from our December meeting by consent?
Okay.
Very good. And then we have Father Engagement Initiative concept, and I know Eden was going to share a little bit about that, and then maybe Mark come in after that. So thank you, Eden, if you want to come up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me okay? Awesome. I really appreciate the time today. Let's see if I can get this going. Maybe. The curse of being the first presenter, right? Awesome. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Eden Beasy. I am a Deputy Health Commissioner at the Indiana Department of Health. I work with Dr. Weaver, and as part of my responsibilities, I have the pleasure of working with all of our programs that are community-facing in the state, all of our really cool public health stuff. And I am today kind of passing along information in hopes of a conversation today about how we can collectively, through all of our shared work, row in the same direction, so to speak, as it relates to, thank you, serving fathers in our state. I want to go back really quickly just to highlight the Department of Health's mission and vision. Our mission at the Health Department is to promote, protect, and improve the health and safety of all Hoosiers. And our vision is every Hoosier reaches optimal health regardless of where they live, learn, work, or play. I don't think I have to do too much convincing in this room about the importance of fathers and fatherhood, but there's a lot of good research out there about how father involvement is linked to that cognitive, emotional, behavioral, and developmental outcomes for our kiddos. And we know those benefits appear early childhood, middle childhood, and well into adolescence. Fatherhood involvement is associated with improved academic outcomes, which we also know correlate with long-term economic mobility and stability. Shared caregiving reduces maternal stress and improves maternal well-being. In my previous life at the health department, I led our maternal and child health teams. And this is something that was always, we always thought about, right? Is we work so hard on improving the health and well-being of moms, babies, kids, adolescents. But a key component we are missing in a lot of our programs was including that dad in the conversation, intentionally including that dad in those programs. Because we know that father involvement is associated with better co-parenting quality and relationship stability. So I had an opportunity to speak with some colleagues in Connecticut. They passed legislation back in 1999 when I did the math, unbelievably, it's 27 years ago, that established a collaborative that lived in their Department of Social Services. The aim of this collaborative was to strengthen the systems that support fathers' positive involvement in their children's lives. And I want to emphasize that term systems, not necessarily programs or things that are funded one time or a couple times in a community, but the systems that support our families. This framework really helps the coordination among state and local partners to improve the policies and practices related to families, with a special focus on fathers who live apart from their children, who may be engaged in the justice system, who may be engaged in child protective services, or specifically with young families. So this was the approach that Connecticut took. And this was an all hands on deck approach. It wasn't just their child welfare system or just justice system. It really was kind of everyone around the table serving families. The guiding principles that they took and which really resonated with me is that children are the central focus. Supporting fathers strengthens the outcomes for those whole families, kind of building back on that research that I shared earlier. That the efforts of this collaboration enhanced, not replaced, supports for mothers, and it's not an either or approach. Really, they're complementary of each other. They recognize that father involvement as supporting goals and strategies across state and local agencies and priorities. And as I mentioned, it really takes all of us. And it builds on existing work that aims to support families. So I come today humbly after having that conversation with Connecticut to explore what would it look like if we took a similar approach here in Indiana. And as I was having that conversation with Connecticut, I thought to myself, man, who is a coordinating body of people concerned with families in the state who touch a ton of different state agencies and local work and who have really tentacles kind of in and out of a lot of this work is the Children's Commission. And I thought, what an important opportunity to bring this in front of you all as an opportunity to think, how could we engage in a similar sort of effort, again, at the very minimum, to understand what would it look like if we all rowed in the same direction as it relates to fatherhood engagement. So my ask here is, what would it look like if SISC explores a statewide cross-system fatherhood initiative, a model on Connecticut's collaborative approach, or something entirely of our own that we can decide how that could or should look. When thinking about this and looking at the strategic plan that was recently considered and we reviewed it at our last meeting, I felt like it was really embedded in that proposed creation and revision of that statewide youth, family, and caregiver engagement plan. So something easily embedded in work that we're planning on doing already. And also embedded in specifically strategic goal 4, improving the safety and outcomes of children and youth who encounter multiple systems, specifically promoting family and caregiver engagement at all stages of system involvement. Now, I think you could go through any one of these strategies and goals and say this belongs here, and this belongs here, and this belongs here. So a lot of cross-sector touches here. What would it look like if we leverage SISC's existing structure and mandate for interagency coordination and cooperation? And again, emphasizing this focus on system changes, embedding fatherhood engagement in existing or new work, not necessarily creating new programs or new unfunded mandates for our agencies or programs. That's what I have. I'm happy to take questions or consider other options, but as I mentioned, I wanted to bring this in front of you all as a consideration for our committees and subcommittees to start exploring this particular topic. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I think this is a great new piece, but could you please take back to the health department that about fathers is very important, but what I'm finding out is that men, period, are having a problem with health.
Thank you. Yep.
They are having a problem accessing, understanding health, their own health. I mean, I ran into a gentleman that he knew who I was. I need your help. I can't do anything. I can't find anything. I can't get any help. You know, so I know I've stepped out of what it was, but you're from the health department.
Thank
so,
you. Absolutely. That's great feedback.
I work for the Indiana Minority Health Coalition and what I do every day. And so I'm really trying to start to structure a program just for men and men's health.
Yeah.
So I would like to have a conversation with you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank
you. Yes,
Thanks, Eden.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your work here, the central role of fathers and their families and outcomes for the whole family. You mentioned a couple of times it's about new system, new work instead of new programs. Can you help paint that picture a little bit? Because I'm really interested in the vision.
Sure, that's a great question. So I'll give you an example from kind of my experience and background at the health department. We support home visiting programs. And so we have home visiting programs in all 92 counties. And what would it look like if part of that home visiting program was intentional curriculum about quality interactions with fathers who may not be living with their family at that time? And that's a commitment that the health department is making to this initiative, is that we are embedding this curriculum that may be above and beyond what already is existing. It's not really adding more time, cost, or effort into the program, but it is us really kind of honing in and focusing on what are those other things that we haven't thought about before with dads. To Representative Summers' point, maybe it's a communication effort about, hey, mom, you're going to your postpartum care, bring dad along with you to help you learn not only about what it's going to take for her to be healthy postpartum, but what options are for him in this mental health space.
What I'm saying is that isn't even built in.
Yep.
Yet. You
Yep.
know, that's not built in.
Yep.
And I'm just seeing a lot of men right now that are, you know, and they don't even normally they don't ask for help.
I know,
You know
and that's
what I'm
part of the problem, right?
they never walk around with it.
Yeah.
But I'm running into, and I don't know if it's because I'm in spaces sometimes where homeless men are, but I know that, and men period are having this issue.
Thank you. I think another example of that I saw from Connecticut were things, classes in correctional facilities for quality interactions for fathers who may be justice involved. How do they have time with their kids that is, the evidence suggests about quality interaction rather than the quantity of time. So what does that look like? How could we help build that into some of the work that's currently happening?
Do you have any stats from Maine on, since it's been 25 years, on the outcomes?
That's a great question. I can pull that and see what I can find. Yeah.
What difference did it make?
Mhm.
You know, as far as teen violence or
Sure.
teen pregnancy or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
those type of issues.
That's a great question. And I think an important part of this will be to understand, what does success look like here? So at the end of this, how do we know what feels better? And when it feels better, what does that lead to for our kiddos? What does that lead to for our families? And yeah, I think that's a really important question to include in this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what we found when we were investigating other father engagement programs, and throughout the years, a lot of them have been focused on results and responsibilities related to fathers, but not how do we engage and support them so those things happen more naturally. So that was really what was eye-opening about the approach they're taking, and something to say, well, gee, we just signed up to do a lot more engagement level work, and this is a population that most of us can admit we've gone far from perfect on engaging them if they're still not aware of how to take care of their own health. You know, we work with that with a lot of other populations, how to do that and engage that, but absolutely Dads are ridiculously terrible at that because we haven't given them that. That's one of their responsibilities, is take care of yourself so you can be a better caretaker of everybody else. All those missing pieces there.
And if you're looking for like a partner in the state that's kind of focusing on too, I think Jay Height at, what's the name of his inner city organization that helps kids. Anybody remember? Anyway, I can hook you up with them because I know they're working with about 500 or 600 East Side kids.
Yep.
That tend to be after school programs and even summer programs and stuff like that. But they're actually working with Tony Dungy on the All Pro Dad.
Yeah.
And so that might be a good connection.
I love that. And I know that there's pockets of these programs that are happening all across the state. And again, I think a really important component of this exploration is what is out there, what works really well, what do we need to amplify and do more of, what do we need to get into more communities. So I think that's another really important component of this exploration. Bernice, did you have a question?
Thank you. I mean, Rep. Devon kind of covered what I was going to share. I mean, I know DCS has some father support programs. I know of some great programs in DFC where USU works with dads to keep kids in relationship with their fathers. And so I'm curious in terms of next steps. I mean, like we said, everyone around this table would certainly be, on board for supporting. What's the next steps in sort of inventorying what's out there? And I'm curious in what you're envisioning. Like, what's the trigger for fathers being looped into support?
Yeah, that's such a good question. For me, I think you hit the nail on the head. The next step is the inventory of what is existing out there. I think the other thing is what is the voice of dad at the table here? So that would be, I think, another important component of this as well. And what does good look like? So at the end of this, what do we hope to achieve and see more of? And again, it may be less about, but I would leave this up to the group of folks who's exploring this. The trigger or the hook to get dad in, rather that it should feel like every one of us around the table we're the hook to get more dads into things that are maybe currently existing. We're doing the yes and approach to include that more intentional outreach for dads.
Offer one more thing.
Sure.
I think as we're inventorying and thinking about this, being mindful that, sometimes it's encouraging the engagement of men.
Yeah.
Period. Because sometimes bio dad is not good for or even available. But there are often men who are willing to step up and fill that role. And so making sure such men are able to also access these supports as well.
Great point. Thank you. And to that, not only inventorying the existing programs for fathers and men, but the gaps and opportunities of programs that are existing, maybe generically or generally for families or for moms. I think there's opportunities that maybe feel like they could be, I mentioned home visiting, for example, if that's a low-hanging fruit that we can plan for and engage in.
I just believe that I'm really on the fact that there's nothing out there for men. And so this has got to be something that is researched, and I don't even know if there's anywhere around the country that is doing it. That I honestly, ChatGPT gave me the best men's program. I asked the question and it gave me the best men's program you ever could have. I've just got to find the people to fill that program that it gave me. So I think that there is so much more back work. I think that there's so much back work that needs to be done, that this is a whole nother meeting with interested people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that could be learned from DCS, and because they've been working in this area for quite some time. I mean, they provide the services every year to many fathers. So I think there's a lot to be learned from the people who have been doing the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then there's as you mentioned, the All Pro Dads. It's a
dedicated fund in the DCS budget bill for, I think it's 375,000 a year, right? And how is that program also filling the gaps? But I would very much appreciate your concrete examples, because when we say it's not about programs, right? It's about framework and like mindset and bringing the right people to the table. So those are examples I've already like thought, okay, how do we intentionally have conversations about our 988 crisis system, right?
Yep,
And
exactly.
when we are mobile crisis, are we actually thinking about the father,
Yep.
right? And how to pull them into that conversation to support him. So I appreciate that. But
It could be communication ads. It could be the imagery that we put across of a dad holding a child. I think those like subtle things that it doesn't, again, have to be this a big change in how we do things, but it could be even subtle things. And I think that's where we have opportunities to explore in a line of work this year for this.
Yeah, I think that's a great point with things like 988 and 211. Just poll and see, and we can probably guess what's the portion of male callers versus female callers, just in general. I bet it's enormously lopsided, but what does that say about how we need to engage better? That these are excellent services that are here to help you, that you can show your strength by seeking resources. How do we capture that?
So I think I'm hearing from the group excitement about this idea. So is there a work group on the commission, Mark, that would fit this task, that we could say, take a closer look at this, put together a resource guide that could then be used by public defenders, prosecutors, judges, nurses, teachers?
Yeah, our Youth, Family, and Caregiver Voices Committee that was newly formed is the obvious fit for this. Obviously, they're looking at broad-based engagement right now, but as we do that, we know full well we're going to find other populations within that need a more finessed approach, and this is certainly one of those. So I would say making that a subgroup of that entity would be a great place to start collecting this information, reach out to DCS and the other entities that are doing something, and then start compiling that best practice model.
Do you need a motion to do so from this group?
Wouldn't hurt.
I would move that this initiative be assigned to the youth and that committee, Mark, for further study and development of a resource guide to start.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Mark, you got some. Thank you, Eden.
Thank you.
So real quick, because last night it was weird. I was with two gentlemen and they had two different stories, and it's basically pertaining to fatherhood. And one of them was actually a Purdue football player that wanted to give up and quit. But his father said, you've never quit anything in your life, don't start now. And he wasn't the starter, right? But he was good enough to make the team. But he got through it. But he just felt such an accomplishment. But if his dad wasn't there encouraging him, he would have never felt that accomplishment. And then on the other hand, I need to have a little deeper discussion with some of the folks in the room. This father who loves his kids, he's got 3 or 4 kids, but the oldest is autistic and nonverbal, but very combative, to the point where DCS has had to pull this child out of the house and put him into care. But it's an opposite contrast, because this child is so big now that is hurting, actually physically hurting the children and the parents in the house. So they had to really do something. But he's in a rock and a hard spot because the funding isn't there for long-term care. And how do we help those families, right? Protect their families and protect the child. It's almost a Gen 6, but it's not, right? But I'd just like to have a deeper conversation on that down the road, just to help those. And I don't know how many of those kind of kids are in our state. How big of an issue is it? I'd like to do a deeper dive if we could at some point. So I didn't want to drag out that too much, but I just wanted to bring that point up.
Yeah.
And then, so let's move forward. And so, Mark, you want to talk about your legislative update?
All right, see, it works fine for me. Thanks for working the bugs out on that, Eden. So I'm going to cover a few items today, and then we get to have the super fun part where I throw one of our interns under the bus that's going to talk about a bunch of other pieces of legislation because we love to make them do that. But I'm going to cover a few of the ones that we talked about at our last meeting, and then a couple of interesting ones have kind of come up in between. You'll see a few that I have listed there, and yes, most of them say they are currently inactive, but actually there's a lot of good news on that list. So I'll run through some of those for you a little bit. So a nice one that definitely the commission does not get the credit for creating, Foster Success, and their youth did a lot of work on this particular bill. We're just happy to be behind them, supporting it and doing what we can to move it along. So this is creating a Foster Youth Bill of Rights. You might be aware that there's already a Foster Parent Bill of Rights. So this is kind of a companion going alongside that, saying the DCS will create this and circulate it to foster youth. And it will include, one part that we always like is it'll include a lived experience youth on that decision-making process. So, and I would say a lot of this is stuff that already exists within DCS and is happening within DCS. It's just elevating that. But when we have our foster youth, a lot of them are coming in the system without a clear understanding of their rights and not trusting what the adults tell them they can and can't do. So the more we can message that clearly and cleanly and concretely to them, I think it really does matter because part of their journey is going to be learning their own sense of self-empowerment again in many, many cases, especially with our older youth. So a great start on that. That one's moving through just fine. We'll be there to testify and interact and assist if there's any need for us on the other side as well as that moves through. A simple bill, but a good bill. That again, we can't message enough how much we are looking out for our youth that are in care. So next one on the list, family access for youth in detention. This is the one that we did talk about and help build through the commission. So again, just the general overview, this was creating a framework of a baseline of in-person visits for youth that are in detention, as well as phone call allowances for youth in detention. And this was also allowed that saying if they're not able to do in person, it needs to be documented and alternatives need to be offered. This goes in our work of making sure that we do have access between family and youth and that visitation isn't used as a punishment in the event that a youth's behavior isn't ideal while they're in detention either. We know family engagement only increases positive behavior and we want to make sure we have a baseline established there. So unfortunately, this one wasn't able to move this year, and it's a very short and very fast-moving session, and the committee you got assigned to has a lot of very big and heavy bills. So definitely one that I think we're going to look at coming back around to. Sometimes it's just a matter of, yes, it's a simple bill, but it's a new issue. It's one they haven't had before. And we lost a lot of time being able to do some of the pre-vetting and stuff with pre-session being cut a little bit short as well. So we'll have a better on-ramp to it, I think, next year and be able to come back around to that again. Again, it wasn't one that anybody was saying, here's something that's fundamentally wrong or flawed with it. It was just getting the right pieces together quickly enough to move that forward. So still on our list, still something we're committed to moving on that. All right, we mentioned also that we're going to look at how we could support family recovery courts and problem-solving courts in general. So again, these are those high specialty courts that look at how they can wrap around additional services around families with particular needs. We have ones for things like safe baby courts is a newer concept that General Assembly's embraced there. Family recovery courts, a lot of substance use treatment related issues going on, veterans courts. And this was really just looking at simply establishing a non-reverting fund $4 that could help fund and grow those family recovery courts and the safe baby courts under them. So this bill actually had an interesting path as the commission got attached to it and researched it into it a little bit further, and we saw it moving through session and we're doing some fine tuning on it. We found that yes, this is definitely a beneficial thing. Those of us that have been in a position where you're trying to grow something, a lot of times you're like, well, I don't need as much the first year, but if it takes off the second year, I need some rollover funds so I can keep building that up and growing that. So we saw the value of making that a non-reverting fund. But this bill is no longer moving, but with a happy ending. we actually located a place in code where there was, for the entirety of problem-solving courts, already established a non-reverting fund. So those are the funds that come allocated down towards entities like the Safe Baby Courts and the Family Recovery Courts. So it was something that was just simply interpreted incorrectly in code. We got that addressed and fixed, and now there is an avenue for that. Little fine tuning still to go. We want to make sure it can take opioid settlement dollars and other things so all the right funds can get flowing through there. But really a case where just us getting attached and being able to assist with some of the research, we were able to find a non-legislative path, at least for the time being, that helps with a lot of the things that were related to that. So always good when we can have that kind of victory and then help out our legislators at the same time. All right, so here's a more interesting one. I don't think we have any legislators here that have been directly attached to this one, but House Bill 1003, this was not on our initial list. This is a boards and commissions bill. It's a very, very large bill. I think it started around 500 and some pages. It's gone trimmed down to a much leaner 400 and something. And a couple of 250-page amendments have gone back and forth on it as well. Complex bill. This was really looking at some of the governor's priorities of how do you reduce some of the committees, boards, commissions that aren't meeting efficiently, could be combined with others. As you know, we've looked at the commission and found places where we could consolidate and combine several times, even in our recent strategic planning. So we've been a part of that process on our end going through. When we get these super large bills, I will be the first to admit that I do not read every single word in them, but I do a quick word search for what unfortunately is usually the least common word in these bills, which is improving. Just pause on that. To see where the Commission on Improving the Status of Children might be noted. And we were, and thankfully not in a negative way. So clear the air on that first. But we were noted in relation to the Kids First Trust Fund Board. This is the board that helps make recommendations for if you've got your Kids First license plate, which of course everybody should have. I've got one of the first ones that still has the KF at the start of it. So that's been around for a long time, done a lot of funding of DCS prevention programming, things through Prevent Child Abuse Indiana, some local outreach tools as well. So there's a board that makes the recommendations of how those funds should be spent out. What this bill does do in its current form is does say that board gets replaced by the commission. So this was not something we specifically requested or knew was coming. And I have, yes, reached out to leadership on that board as well, so we can have some discussion about what happens if this happens. Essentially, that's something that I'm not going to speak for them, of course, until we get deeper in discussions what that combination could look like. However, we are a recommendation body. We often recommend things related to child abuse and neglect prevention. I think there's a good fit there that we can make work well, where especially if we have something that we want to recommend that would be more beneficial to be handled publicly or at the local level and potentially have some funding mechanism attached to it. That sounds like a good win in that system. So again, this is a very large bill with a lot of stuff in it. What its journey is going to be from here and how many more amendments, dare I say conference committee, are likely in its path. So there could be more changes, but I want to give everybody here a heads up because that does impact the Children's Commission. Hopefully it's something that if it were to occur as it's prescribed currently, can be a very positive move for both groups. We can provide more administrative support and have a pathway for recommendations to get some funding as they go along as well. And we can treat that as a nice win-win. So,
Mark, can you elaborate just a little bit more? Is it an oversight that the commission does oversight of that board, or do we replace the board ourselves as directors, or do you know?
Yeah, the wording is fairly generalized in the bill, so I think we have room for some thoughts of how we would do that. So it does say that any reference to the board becomes a reference to the commission, but it wipes out a lot of the existing language about that board's makeup and what it needs to be. I could see it being something that maybe we do look at forming a committee that is the front loader for that, and then that comes up to the commission. So I think there's room for mechanics.
Can you share the trust fund, what dollars are there right now?
I can say in recent reporting, there's an excess of $3 million in there. Now, like most funds, that is something that you have to look at. What's the new dollars coming in and what's the interest off of that fund? Because you don't want to just wipe out the fund. Ideally, it's something you continue to grow. And then you have that interest plus new revenue that you can look at making investitures from. But again, I have a lot more talks to do with the existing board to make sure I'm not misquoting anything. But there is funding there, and I think we can be a good pathway to system and how that could possibly be grown and utilized. So I'll have more updates as that goes through. Before the end of session, I've already noted with them that I'll be happy to meet with them directly, probably get a meeting of them this week, and then I'll appear at their next board meeting if it looks like the bill's definitely going through in its current form. So we want to make sure this is a partnership situation, obviously. And it might be a good case where a lot of the existing board would make sense to be the ones that become that committee as well, since they've got institutional knowledge that we don't, having just discovered to say that this might fall under our duties. All right. One more that we didn't talk about, because it is in another one of those combination of lots of different things bills. House Bill 1363, various public safety matters. Lots of stuff in it. This bill actually didn't make it to the halfway point. It died in Ways and Means due to some other fiscal matters. But it did have a concept built into it that we've talked about related to transitions of youth in and out of systems. That is a great fit for our multi-system youth task force moving forward. So we do want to look at this language and look at if there's something that could be crafted into a standalone bill for the future. And it's really looking at when a youth gets discharged from Department of Corrections. And Department of Corrections, they are usually a ward of the department at that point in time. And they're doing their planning. They feel, okay, we got somebody who's going to be there for them, a parent that's got to come back for them and everything, and then that plan falls apart. And now we've got a child under 18 that doesn't have a parent there taking immediate custody on that discharge. What happens? And this would create a system where they make sure they talk to the court that made the wardship decision, and the wardship is restarted over with DCS. Now, in this bill, the language is a little bit where we'd like to see it shored up more, because it's not a specific process. You could actually technically read it and saying, well, after DOC discharges them, then they let the courts know, you know, and part of me is like, well, where's the kid now? Right? Not the intention of the bill at all, but we want to make sure that wording is right if we go forward with that. I think this is a great example of a gap that we don't want to happen, that there's ever a case where you know, we feel like there is a plan, the parent is planning on picking up the child and bringing them back home. But it has been reported where there's cases where those promises are made and then not kept. And now we've got some scrambling to do at the last minute on that.
Have we thought about kinship and how this, like, if you have grandparents who are caring for a kid before they go into DOC, but now the parents are refusing, are you going to end up with kids in foster care instead of?
Yeah.
And does the state really need to be involved?
Yeah.
Grandma and grandpa are willing to.
And that, I think, is why I'm, as much as we're like, well, this had a good path and was moving forward and stuff, we're kind of glad we've got a chance to do some tuning on the language here and make sure it's written the right way. I think the intent is clear. We understand that we're not having children that are leaving DOC and then found without a home to go to. Totally understand that. We want to address that, but I think there's some better wording. So this is one where we want to reach out with our friends at DOC and DCS and say, well, we understand the gap you're trying to close, and we understand that should not be a gap that happens, but maybe there's a timeline of this that we establish and we have some firmer commitments, and there's a way that we can make sure it happens in the right way.
There's already statute now. Of course, I play an attorney. I thought there was already statute that a court can resume jurisdiction. Right? Like,
yeah.
So doesn't that pathway already exist?
I think this was looking at trying to make some of that an automatic process instead of a may assume.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I think that was the intent of it. So it's saying DOC wardship ends, they notify the court takes jurisdiction and gives wardship over to DCS. But again, the way that happens, how quickly that happens, the process involving in that isn't really mapped out. Most of the language you see on the screen is what's in the bill. And this was in a bill that was one of those various bills where we know this was probably something that was a good design, a good intention. They got put in there, but didn't have the time to get direct attention to really get the language just right. So I think we have the ability to work on this and get just right language introduced.
Yeah, and I think we actually met with DOC with this one, just to say, here's some areas that we would need to iron out for next time.
Yeah, definitely.
So I just want to make one comment. I did a little bit of investigating with the schools as well on these children coming out of that placement and they still need to have education. So they need to be a party when these discussions are happening as well.
That's excellent. Yes. Especially if we're looking at who's actually the ward of the child and we're trying to get them re-enrolled and everything else. Pretty good. So, and another interesting one, not going anywhere this year, but I think it's a good concept that's had some good momentum behind it, a lot of good thought behind it, and we can probably work on getting something across the finish line that really meets the need. Yeah.
The Youth Justice Oversight Committee has had the Transitional Services Work Group operating, and we're looking to combine that effort with the Multi-System Youth Committee, so we're not duplicating. And I will share that there was some difficulty figuring out the various pay source paths for these youth coming out, because if you're under parole, it's one pay source. If you're under probation, it's another. If you're under neither, there is maybe no resource for the services that you need. And so I think as the trial judge making this decision, that matters because you don't want to set a family up for failure. So to the extent that going forward, the multi-system group can attack that funding issue, I think that would be immensely helpful for everyone involved with these families.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think it's a natural fit under that multi-system youth task force. Again, we can formalize making an assignment of this issue to them. I know I've already talked to them and they feel like they've worked on this issue in the past and they'd love to circle back now that there's some momentum behind it and make it happen. Will of the chair.
Do we have a motion? Second. All in favor? Any more discussion, I guess, before? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Right. Lots of good work getting assigned to our group. So our strategic plan, I would stop and say that it's great to see how a lot of things are fitting into the thought process that we had in creating that. So it's good that we've kind of read the zeitgeist correctly of issues that are at that right place to make some change. So with that, that's the end of my list. Do we have any other legislative items that I didn't cover that any of the commission members wanted to bring up that are also flowing? I think there's like at least 2 or 3 other bills out there.
The one I'm kind of excited about or would love to see happen is Senate Bill 88. I had a bill that dealt with, and it's something that came out of a focus group I worked on this summer with our community and looking at abuse. And then it turned into family resource centers. And then we also looked at how do we stop kids from having kids. And those that have met me know that I say that now and then. And I just really started diving into that a little bit, and that seems to be a God thing. But there's a curriculum out that was started in Chicago called the Success Sequence. And it's just talks about the success. If we're teaching kids how to be successful in life, is to get your education, right? Get your career path, get married, and then have children. 95% of that time, you'll never be in poverty if you follow that sequence. And if we're not teaching that, what are they being taught? And so today, in 1980, as you know, 20% of kids were born out of wedlock. Today, it's 40% national average. In Indiana, it's 43%. And in most of our inner city and African-American communities, it's pushing 70%. And so when there isn't that father or that mother or that adult in these kids' lives, because we have kids having kids, what are they learning? And who are they learning it from? What are we teaching them? And so I think the success sequence, if we can, when I go talk to these kids in the jails and listen to their hearts and they're screaming to help them, they're mad because they don't have a father, but they've already fathered 2 kids themselves by the time they're 17. And the devil's trying to destroy our families and our kids, and the numbers are growing. We have over 13,000 kids in our foster system, and another 17,000 homeless youth. And the numbers are growing. So we have to do something, and I just felt like this curriculum is just possibly a step forward to give these kids a picture of what success might look like and what their life could be like if they choose to wait to have kids until they're ready. Sorry.
I'll second with that. I'm working with some groups nationally through the National Organization for a lot of the health departments. We've talked a lot about adverse childhood experiences and what some of that looks like. So there's a broader examination saying, but now we need to really start talking about what works to protect them and insulate them and help them recover and rebound from the experiences they've had. So we can have that positive side of the discussion about what are the right things to put in place instead of just looking at the negative outcomes that happens when there's bad experiences that are out there or incomplete resources that are out there. So I think there's a lot of folks that are saying, now we're ready to look at the other side of that coin and really make some investments. All right, well, next up we have Sierra. They talked about, as she said, the fun task of tracking a whole lot of bullying and online safety legislation for us this year, and she's going to give a little report on that.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sierra Swosey. As Mark mentioned, I am an intern for the Children's Commission. I started my internship in the fall, and then I'm going to wrap it up in May when I graduate with my MSW. So I'm really excited about that.
Where are you going to school?
IU Indy downtown. So yeah, really like it. Good program. So the majority of my internship with the commission has been focused on learning more about just legislation and kind of like the climate in Indiana, learning about the context of issues that the commission is specifically focused on. So I've learned a lot, definitely. And so this semester, I've really been able to put the context and background knowledge that I've built up into action with the session going on and tracking all those bills and stuff. So before I get into the bills, I just wanted to note that only 2 of the ones I'll be talking about today are active. The rest of the 5 are inactive, but as Mark kind of mentioned earlier, the language of the bills are still important and apply to the Suicide Prevention, Bullying, and Online Safety Task Force. So the language can be used, revised, what have you, for the next session. So the first couple bills are about student phone usage in schools. The first one is SB 78, Wireless Communication Device Policy. This is one of the 2 active bills authored by Senators Rotz and Good. This bill essentially prohibits students from using wireless communication devices or phones, smartwatches, things like that inside schools during the school day. It also it allows teachers to use wireless communication devices, but only for educational purposes. And their usage of the devices would have to be on school supplied devices. And then lastly, this one mandates schools to either implement a no device policy or a secure storage policy. So this bill was heard in the Committee on Education and Career Development, where it passed, and then it went on to pass in the chamber. And it actually is being heard this morning. I believe testimony is still going on in the House Education Committee. So keep an eye out for that one. The next bill is HB 1034, Student Cellular Telephone Use, authored by Representative Teshka. This bill is the companion bill to SB 78, so the one we just heard about. And the language is almost identical. So to spare you some repetition, I won't go over all that again. But again, the language is very, very similar to SB 78. This bill is inactive, was referred to Committee on Education, but didn't receive a hearing. So the next couple bills are going to be all about youth's usage of social media. The first one is SB 129, age verification for access to social media. This bill is inactive also. It was authored by Senators Bohacek and Brown. Essentially, this bill would require social media platforms to restrict their access to their content for youth that are ages 16 and younger, unless they acquire like parental permission. So this bill was referred to the judiciary and also did not receive a hearing this session. Next bill on the list is HB 1178, minor access to social media. Again, this bill is very similar to SB 129, but this one specifies that it would be restricted to children 14 years old and younger that would need to acquire that parental consent to access the platform. And then it also goes on to detail specific ways parents can monitor and access the accounts of their kids. Like it talks about parents would have access to a separate password to the youth's social media account, so they could like go in and monitor and kind of control the access to what the kids see within their accounts. But again, this bill is inactive, did not receive a hearing in the judiciary. And that brings me to our second active bill, SB 140, doxing. So this bill was authored by Senators Becker, Freeman, and Glick. This bill defines doxing as a person who intentionally posts information of a targeted person or a person that is close to a targeted person as a form of threat to them in retaliation. So that classifies doxing as a Class A misdemeanor, and then doxing would become a level 6 felony if the act resulted in that targeted person becoming seriously physically harmed, and then it becomes a level 5 felony if the doxing results in the targeted person suffering a catastrophic injury or death. So this was referred to Corrections and Criminal Law, where it was passed, went on to pass in the chamber. And again, this one is being heard this morning in Courts and Criminal Law. I believe it's testimony only. And the reason I bring this one up is because there's no distinction between youthful offenders and adult offenders. So I did some research on this bill and found that there was a study that found over 1 in 10 youth engage in doxing. And then we know during adolescence, youth often confide in each other, especially during times of emotional distress. And then the study also went on to find that youth displayed higher levels of trust on social media platforms. So this bill is important because it needs to find a balance between deterring the online harassment among youth, but without criminalizing the youth for doxing. So that's SB 140. And then our last couple bills are all about bullying. This first one is HB 1093, student bullying and abusive behavior. This one is also inactive. It was authored by our very own Representative Devon. So I'm going to give a quick overview of this one, and then if you have anything to add to it, please do, Representative Devon. So this bill would require public and charter schools to track instances of bullying and abusive behaviors. It requires schools to create and implement interventions to prevent bullying and abusive behaviors. And then it would also require the schools to submit a report of the data they collected regarding the behaviors. So again, this one did not receive a hearing in the Committee on Education. Representative Devon, do you have anything to add to that?
It's kind of, we have this task force. We have a task force in the commission that is reviewing the bullying and suicide. And sadly, there was another incident. This happened in the last few weeks that a child took her life because of being bullied. And so the DOE has some heartburn with some of the processes that we're trying to look at and to do and reporting and, and with school choice, there's a lot of competition for schools to compete for kids today. And so I think, when people would look to move into a district or an area where their kids could go to school, then they see this issue could be a big issue. So a lot of schools don't do the reporting. They don't show, if you're moving into a community, you're going to look to see where's the best school system. Everybody wants their kids to go to the best school systems, but so I know there's stuff that we need to work on and continue to work on, and that's something that we're trying to move on. And so we may be able to take some of the language and amend it into other bills. So it may not be completely dead. So we'll continue to work on that. And then I'm curious to see, if it's becoming the number one or getting to be close to the number one death for certain age teams. It's something that I think government, we really have to really do a deeper dive, and I think we're trying to do that. But I'd love to get a feel from our focus group that we have, our task force here in the commission, to say, okay, what kind of goals, how soon do we see something happening, and to give us some type of feedback. I would love to know that sooner than later. All right, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Keep up. You're doing great.
Thanks. Okay. And then the last bill I have on my agenda is HB 1107, Bullying Oversight Committees and Ombudsman. This bill is also inactive, authored by Representative Manning. This bill creates a state bullying ombudsman within the Department of Education and requires school corporations to provide the contact information for the ombudsman. And then it also requires every school corporation to create their own bullying oversight committees. Again, referred to the Committee on Education and is inactive. Did not receive a hearing. So that is all of the bills I have today. I can answer any questions if anyone has any.
What's a dream job look like for you?
Asking the hard questions. I'm not sure. I definitely like learning about the legislation and specifically state legislation, but I'm not sure. I've been looking at the job board, so I'll have to get back to you.
In case any agency in here has some openings.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Next, Mark, an update report.
All right. Yeah, a few updates for you. And first, I would like to, at the tail of the discussion there that Sierra led us into, too, looking at specifically the bullying legislation. This is one where we have had some talks with folks at the governor's office and DOE, and we really do have a commitment to say, next session, we need to have something that gets filed and is a movable item on bullying. I know it's been a struggle to find that perfect mix of everything, but I know our task force reviewed all these pieces of legislation that Sierra went through and is very interested in a lot of the topics, but specifically on the bullying ones, they like the package of creating something like an ombudsman's office that offers services and supports to families and to schools. And then looking at, before we look at mandates to schools, have we built the proper support system first? And the concept of how is there a way to look at the bullying data being something that isn't seen as punitive or negative on the school's reporting end, so we can encourage reporting. If it's seen as something that your school is bad because you're reporting bullying cases. That's never anybody's goal. We need the numbers, but we don't want to be seen as, because bullying is something you acknowledge is happening at your school, it's like saying that you're a bad school, because we know that's not the case. We know it's a youthful behavior that happens in a wide variety of settings, regardless of quality or inequality at that school. So I think there's a lot of room to say, let's get things moving. Let's get some things flowing through so we can have that long-term plan for bullying in place. So a start of that is going to be taking some of this, and realistically, you know, one of the bills creating an ombudsman's office was not a bad concept at all. It has a fiscal impact and it's a non-fiscal year. So unfortunately, something that wasn't probably going to have a very good path forward this year to do it correctly and have proper funding behind it. But a lot of great ideas there that we were committed to getting right behind and seeing what we can do in the interim, sit down with DOE, sit down with the governor's office. How can we prioritize that we are addressing these issues moving forward? Really, it did give us a lot of encouragement to say there were so many bills filed this year, even in a year where we realized that a lot of these are costly initiatives that probably couldn't get across the finish line. The legislative appetite is very, very clear. That we need to realize some of the harms and risks of social media, that we need to look at how bullying is happening. We need to look at how all these things intersect together and create heightened suicide risk and mental health issues. So the acknowledgement is there, and that's what we need first. So now we can find ourselves the charge from that. But very clear our legislature is taking it quite seriously and that they're ready to get some stuff moving. So always happy to see those things. So other things to note, I did want to pass on from Blaine Cook, our coordinator that has to keep all the task forces and committees staffed and flowing along. Sat down with him before he went on a brief vacation this week. He's very excited about how the strategic plan implementation is going so far. He would like to report for the first time in his tenure. We are fully co-chaired on all of our committees and task forces. Which anybody that's had the realm of trying to keep a bunch of groups like that populated and you feel like it's never going to happen. So he's in a good spot right now. And now publicly we have jinxed that. So hopefully it stays that way for more than a few weeks. But that's a lot of work to do. So hats off to him for making sure that we have all the right people in place, anxious to lead and implement that plan. And the excitement on the plan is very high. Again, this time we started with letting the task forces and committees do the core planning of it and then bring that up to the commission instead of the other way around. So they created goals that they know they've got the momentum and resources and strengths to put forward. And we're already seeing a lot of great outcomes from that. So good positive update there. And then lastly, we have our annual Day of the Child coming up. That is always on President's Day, so February 16th this year. That is a Monday, so we look at reading the declaration from the governor's office proclaiming Day of the Child. IYI gives a preview of their kids count data for the coming year in the House chamber, and we have once again over 300 youth signed up to be there, to want to learn and engage and be part of our civic processes throughout that day too. So anybody that happens to be in the State House on President's Day and you see all those youth flowing around, encourage them, give them resources. We're going to do our best to make sure they all leave matched up with some opportunity to continue that journey. Again, I can't emphasize enough, this is a day off from school. Nobody is making them come here. And 300 youth said, I want to go down to the State House and learn about civic engagement and how I can be a part of the solution. Very cool to see. It uplifts a lot of the work we do, where sometimes you wonder if they're attached and listening to what we're talking about. And they're always very clear to say, oh, we're here and we want to be a very active part of the solution. That goes with our youth reps on the commission, the youth that we have all throughout the commission, and then youth that show up at something like that day at the State House, choosing with their free time to say, this is what I want to do with it. So very good. Always a success every year. Feel free to drop on by there. If you've got a group of youth that would want to plug into that and you'd like some more information, we'll get that to you too. Boys, I think that's all my updates for today.
Judge, maybe you remember, did we make a motion to allow Blaine to go on a vacation?
I think we did.
I don't remember that either. So thank you, Mark.
Well, look, he hadn't been on one since he's been here, so.
That is fair.
Gotta treat him like a slave.
Blaine, we get to watch this again. We hope you have a great time. Bring the sunshine back with you when you come back from Arizona.
Keep in mind, Blaine somehow is still on this call, so
I think that's our agenda, and I just want to say thank you for everybody that's here. You got thoughts, ideas, dreams, let's talk, let's continue to keep improving the status of children. Representative Summers?
Well, the last thing is the next meeting date, which is wrong.
Did we change it?
It's wrong. I mean, it's the 22nd. It says the 24th on here. And the reason I know about the 24th, it's my birthday. So, present according.
Yes, we were all just thinking about the birthday
Yeah.
to be the 22nd.
22nd, correct.
But she will still be accepting presents on the meeting on the 22nd.
I'll be accepting present. I'll be, I'm available all month.
Any last comments from committee members?
Can I make a quick public announcement
Yes.
about exciting?
Sure.
All 92 counties are now covered with mobile crisis teams, so we are very excited that I know, thank you. So it's very hard to get to that one last county, but it is now covered, so very exciting.
Awesome. All right. Again, let's keep Adam Krupp in your prayers and hope he gets better and wish Jennifer the best, right? Eric, I know he's been in that role, so I know it's going to be very stressful. But be supportive of her and anything we can do to help her succeed in this moment. So with that, motion to adjourn. So moved. Second, all in favor?
Bye.
Adjourn.